There is a type of person who does not chase. They do not pursue attention. They do not perform for validation. They do not explain themselves to rooms that were not ready to understand them anyway. And yet, the attention finds them. The opportunities arrive unsummoned. The right people appear at the precise moment they are needed. The world organizes itself around their presence in a way that looks, from the outside, like extraordinary luck. It is not luck. It is the consequence of a specific internal architecture, one that most people will spend their entire lives trying to build from the outside, through performance, through constant visibility, through the exhausting act of making themselves impossible to ignore, while the architecture itself can only be built from within. Carl Jung called it the integrated self. The ancient Hermetic tradition called it the coherent frequency, and both were describing the same phenomenon: a human being who has become so completely and so honestly themselves that they generate a field, a psychic frequency so singular, so undiluted by performance, so unmistakably real that the world cannot help but orient toward it. This is what it means to become a mystery. Not to become secretive, not to become withholding, to become so genuinely, so irreducibly, so completely yourself that the people around you cannot fully predict you, cannot fully categorize you, cannot fully contain you within the frameworks they use to organize their understanding of what a person is allowed to be. And that quality, that radical, earned interior singularity, is the most magnetic force available to a human being. In the next 10 minutes, I am going to show you why most people never develop it, what is actually preventing it, and the precise internal process by which it becomes not just possible, but inevitable. You were taught to be legible. From the earliest years of your formation, before you had the consciousness to question the instruction, you were shaped toward readability. Be consistent, be predictable, be the version of yourself that the people around you could understand without effort. The animal biopilot absorbed this teaching with the same completeness it absorbed everything else that arrived before you could critically evaluate it. And it built a structure, a persona. Not the person you are, the person you learned to present in order to be accepted, understood, and safe within the social systems that shaped your early world. The persona is not a lie. It is a survival strategy that the nervous system developed before it had access to better options. But here is what the persona costs. Every quality that did not fit within its carefully maintained perimeter, every dimension of your character that was too complex, too contradictory, too large, too strange, too singular to be comfortably presented to the rooms that were evaluating you, was placed behind the persona. Hidden, managed, controlled. And the person who emerges when all of that is behind the persona is legible, understandable, predictable, safe, and utterly, completely, profoundly ordinary. Not because they are ordinary, because they have made themselves ordinary in exchange for the social safety that ordinariness provides. Subscribe to Hermetic Mind right now. This channel exists at the precise intersection of everything you have been told and everything you have sensed was missing. If you are watching this, you already know you are not ordinary. Subscribe as the first act of refusing to perform as if you were. Jung spent his career documenting what happens to people who attempt to live entirely within the persona for the duration of a human life. The result, in clinical terms, was always some version of the same phenomenon. Midlife crisis is the polite name for it. The more accurate name is the collapse of the false self under the weight of the unlived life. The shadow does not disappear when it is placed behind the persona. It accumulates. Every quality that was denied expression builds pressure behind the wall. Every dimension of the self that was suppressed generates a counter-frequency, a psychic frequency running in opposition to the one the persona is broadcasting. And the world, which responds to the complete signal, not the performed surface, receives the contradiction. The magnetic person you were attempting to become through performance and presentation remains stubbornly out of reach. Because magnetism is not the product of performance, it is the product of coherence. And coherence, the quality of a signal that is not divided against itself, is only possible when the shadow has been integrated, when the qualities that were placed behind the wall have been claimed, examined, and returned to the conscious self that originally generated them. This is the shadow work that Jung called the most essential psychological task of adult development. Not for therapeutic reasons, for the most practical reason imaginable. Because the person who has done this work, who has turned toward every dimension of themselves that was placed in the shadow and said, "This is mine, I am claiming it, I am no longer asking permission to be this," broadcasts a frequency that has no equivalent in the world of performance. A frequency that is not trying to attract, that is not trying to impress, that is not organized around what the room needs it to be. A frequency that is simply, completely, irreducibly itself. And that frequency, unprecedented in its coherence, unmistakable in its singularity, is what creates the mystery. The quality that makes people lean in, that makes rooms quiet when you speak, that makes opportunities arrive as if they had been navigating toward you before you were aware you wanted them. But this is only the surface. What I am about to show you is where the architecture of genuine magnetism reveals its deepest mechanism, and where most people stop because it requires something more confronting than any external performance ever asked. The void, not as a metaphor, as the precise neurological and psychological state in which the integrated self becomes fully available to itself. The void is what exists before the biological autopilot activates its filters, before the persona assembles itself for the day, before the shadow's counter-programs begin their unconscious work of pulling the self back toward familiar limits. In the void, in the genuine stillness of a consciousness that has quieted its own inherited noise, the self is not performing, not managing, not protecting. It is simply present. And presence, the quality of a consciousness that is fully inhabiting the current moment without the biological autopilot's constant editor, is the most powerful and the most rare frequency available to a human being. Because most people have never been fully present in a single moment of their adult lives. They have been present within the performance of presence, conscious within the management of consciousness, themselves within the careful curation of themselves, but not fully, not without the background hum of the persona maintaining its shape. The void practice, entering, even briefly, even imperfectly, the state of undivided presence, is the direct path to the coherent psychic frequency that generates genuine magnetism. Not by acquiring anything, by releasing the division. The law of reverse effort operates here with surgical precision. The harder you work to become magnetic, the more you perform, present, position, the more the survival frequency of trying activates. The more the counter-frequency of the shadow pushes against the persona's performance. The less divided the signal, the less coherent the field, the less the world can feel the singular, undiluted, unmistakable quality of a person who is not trying to be anything other than precisely what they are. The reading of reality that a coherent person performs is not a skill of observation. It is a state of being in which the field of reality speaks back to the coherent frequency with a specificity and a precision that the divided self could not perceive through its noise. The opportunities they notice, the people they attract, the synchronicities that accumulate around their presence are not luck. They are the field responding to a frequency that is clear enough to receive a clear response. You were not made to be legible. You were not made to be predictable. You were not made to compress the full dimensions of what you are into the space that the rooms around you could comfortably process. The ordinariness you have been performing